Welcome to Making Infrastructure Happen. My name is Femi Awofala. I'll be your host on this episode. This episode, we'll be discussing governance and infrastructure. And I have with me an amiable friend and colleague, and also a thought leader within the governance space, Ibukun Oshoba. You're welcome, Ibukun.
Thank you, Femi.
Ibukun has great experience, over 15 years experience in advising corporate and private clients in regulatory governance and majorly corporate individuals and organizations in sustainability and governance issues in Africa. In this episode, we'll be looking at what the importance and role that governance plays in infrastructure projects. Thank you once again, and maybe a few introductory remarks from you, Ibukun. What has been your experience over your career, and what shaped you into moving into this specialist area of governance? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for having me, Femi. So what I would say is law is really broad. And so in my practice, I started out working in litigation. So I worked, my first two jobs, NYSC and post-NYSC, were with law firms that practiced litigation. I had an SAN boss, so you can imagine. However, we had a lot of corporate clients. So even though we were doing litigation work, it was always stemming from something corporate. Either it was something debt, either it was some type of contractual breach and all of that. And so I was introduced to companies pretty early and how their structure worked. And as I went on with different roles, I find that I kept getting drawn to corporate law practice. And by the time I was a few years in, I had decided to, try my hands on the company secretarial roles. And that, brings you into the board system.
Exactly.
And once you experience boards, you either love it or hate it. And I loved it.
Oh, great.
So that's how I got into governance. I was just like, I like it here. I like seeing how decisions are made.
Yeah.
I like seeing how intricacies impact organizations, because sometimes you just don't see the behind the scenes. You just see the headline, you just see the success or the failure. So I really enjoyed the behind the scenes.
Oh, great.
It can be very tasking to work with board leaders because they demand a lot from you. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
It's a lot of speedy, we have to get this today, that, but I enjoy it.
Great.
I enjoy it. So that's how I got into governance.
Okay, so I remember those days. There was a lot of emphasis on corporate governance of major Nigerian institutions, even public sector, and I used to hear about good governance. And over the last 10 years, a lot of corporate organization has paid more emphasis and be intentional to actually build that culture in their society. What do you think is the driving force of most firms and corporate organizations moving to that space now?
Okay, so with the history of corporate governance in itself, that dates back many, many years. So you can go into like how corporations are made.
Okay.
And once you do company law or you do contract law, you kind of get into that a little. But corporate governance itself blew up post the 2008 financial crisis.
Okay. Yeah.
So once everything crashed, because again, once things crash, people need solutions.
Exactly.
Everybody's like, oh yeah, there's something they've been talking about. Let's go to see what it's about.
Exactly.
With public companies, again, once you're public, so either government public or publicly listed, people are involved. So once the public is involved, at that level, there's a lot of regulations there. However, it was this thing where you hear a lot of people say checkbox. Checkbox means, do you have a board? Yes.
Yes.
Do you have a chairman? Yes.
Yes.
Do you have meetings? Yes.
Yes.
So with corporate governance, even I get tired of the term checkbox, but it's a thing where do I have what the law says I should have? Yes. And I move on. But post 2008, everybody was like, oh, actually, structure matters. It's not just about throwing money at things and getting money out. It's that if there's no structure, we don't catch things early. Because the companies that crashed, the really, really big ones, what they found at the end was with a little bit of transparency and accountability, with the CFO saying, oh, actually something is wrong, as opposed to saying, it's wrong, but maybe we can solve it before it blows up.
Correct.
that's how corporate governance, took on the scene. In Nigeria as well, we did have banking issues
Crisis,
where a
yeah.
lot of banks, had to consolidate. There was,
Yeah.
again, money drives many things, or if I should use the word capital.
Capital, yeah.
And once capital was impacted, everybody thought, how do we solve this? Structure, corporate governance.
Correct. Yeah, great. That's a great feedback, because I remember the 2008 crisis. Was in Lehman Brothers, and I even watched a movie about it on YouTube, and I saw that there was so much happening with respect to the structure of the organizations. The MD was protecting himself and things, and that also dates back to the function of a corporation. Let me put it that way. I remember doing corporate finance. They always say there's the agency, like management is an agent of the shareholders. And that dates back to, corporate finance 101. So, but for some reasons, maybe because we've not paid attention to it, but now we've seen that even as a PLC, there's a national corporate governance code or something like that. Can you just enlighten us a little bit about what are now the real policies you need to adhere to, to meet up at least the minimum standards to be called an organization that actually has a minimum level of corporate governance standards?
Okay, great. So we do have the Code of Corporate Governance.
Okay.
It was brought in 2018, so enacted into law in 2018. The thing is, there are many laws that govern companies. So, for example, we've had CAMA since forever. We've had a new review of CAMA.
Yeah.
We have all these side laws that actually say this is what you should do. We also have the regulators. So, of course, if you're a bank, CBN, you have NICOM for the insurance companies. We have SEC for public companies. In general, the governance code applies to publicly listed companies in general. So, like, if we are going into the nitty-gritty, publicly listed companies actually have to report. So they actually have to submit reports to the NGX and say, oh, we did have our board meeting. So it's not like it's mandatory, but again, if you don't do it, then there's no report to put up against your name. It does impact how shareholders view you. It does impact how the market views you. However, the code also does apply broadly, meaning that private sector is highly encouraged, especially regulated bodies. So even if you're not public, but you're regulated, usually your regulator would be like, where's your report on this? CBN is very stringent on those things.
Okay.
If they say there's a minimum board, you must have it. They say there is a technical skill that must be there, you must have it and report it and submit that in your report. So that is one of the rules. There are also codes of corporate governance per sector. So like CBN has its own. So meaning that the regulators also say, you know what, even though this general code applies, the principles are good, there are specifics that we also want to change.
For you to add to it.
Yes. So it will say things like, oh, you must have subcommittees, you must have audit and risk. But the regulators that may say, in insurance, maybe we don't want audited and risk, or we want it, but we want an additional one. And that's something that we see play. So it's just, even not-for-profits now have something that's called a draft. And I know that we're working on the private sector code of corporate governance. So the governance code that applies now technically applies to public companies, but is also applied to private companies. If you're a good company, you should read it. It's to be honest, the principles are good for you.
Exactly.
It just says have a board, have a board meeting, have committees, stakeholder management. So it talks about really basic things, which I think is sometimes because we call them like laws and policies, they sound so high. No, it's just saying, look, with these structures in your organization, you would have better transparency and run better. So I do personally know that when I'm helping companies, even if they're in the private sector, I would refer them and say, oh, maybe you want to have a minimum board number. Maybe you want to be sure that you have independent board members, because those are things that people don't think about. Maybe you want to have committees, because again, if you don't really have money or time, those things may be tricky. Even with cooperatives, I've worked with a few cooperatives, a few not-for-profits. They don't apply to you, but applying it just makes your business do better.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much for that. Also, with respect to infrastructure, Now, we at the African Catalyst, we help to do a lot of capacity building programs, investment readiness programs. And from our research, what we've seen also is the fact that a number of infrastructure projects tend to start on the wrong footing. And some of them, right from shaping the idea, if 3 or 4 shareholders came together, let's build this toll road, let's build this refinery, let's do this power project. But we basically just look at it at the fact that it is a good idea, but the pathway to execution, to make that project happen, we need to develop maybe technical reports, we need to acquire the land, we need to procure contractors, we need to raise the capital. And those decisions are really where we tend to see a lack of understanding and a lack of transparency and failure. A number of African countries or African entrepreneurs, maybe because we all come from family-owned businesses. So when you pull that into an infrastructure project, the dad is the chairman, the firstborn is the managing director, because really that is how they have seen it and they have learned it. And what we are beginning to see now is the fact that governance is an invisible infrastructure architecture behind every project. And what we intend to look at in this episode more intensely is the fact that governance encompasses both institutional, regulatory, and accountability mechanisms through which projects are conceived, procured, and financed. And if you look at the Nigerian Infrastructure Regulatory Commission, which is the ICRC, formed in 2025 to anchor PPP governance, yet there are still project delays, there are still cost overrun, maybe projects are also stalled. And one of the main things that the World Bank also reports in Nigeria is the fact that there are various indicators that are ranking various countries, and Nigeria ranks averagely below on things like rule of law, regulatory quality, governance effectiveness, and other metrics that directly determine bankability of infrastructure projects. So we believe that in Nigeria, governance failures manifest at multiple stages. For example, in project selections, they may be politically driven. So maybe Nigeria needs a next refinery, for example, by the government. People might say there's already one in the south, there's one in the north, there's no refinery in the middle belt. So how do you think governance actually shapes decision making? Let's even start from the public sector level in terms of maybe choice of infrastructure projects.
Okay. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Infrastructure is for public good, whether it's financed by a private organization or by the government. It's for public good. And so it's always interesting when things don't work out, because even though on paper it seems, oh, well, the contract just failed, actually those things have ripple effects.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, not to sound like, the general Nigerian, I'll give Nigeria some credit. The truth is, projects fail across the board. Yeah. You mentioned statistics. The truth is, the IMF has a report that says 1/3 of infrastructure expenditure is wasted in most countries. That's not even a Nigerian problem. Yeah. The challenge with African countries or developing countries is it's a higher number. So we allocate 1 billion for something, 500 million, we cannot account for it.
Exactly.
So those are the challenges. However, when it comes to governance, when it comes to infrastructure, what are we saying to start with? We're just saying in very plain language, like you said, how did we select? Exactly. How are we executing? How are we implementing? With the public sector, the thing is, policy is how we first start. So policy means that, what does the law even allow? So you'll find out with refineries, sometimes it's in the law and the law has restricted you from being able to put anything. So maybe they go by geopolitical zones.
Correct.
So once one is there, a second one can be there, irrespective of whether it's the best place to be. For example, ports. Ports cannot be anywhere but where there's water.
Water, exactly.
So your policy should align with that. But like you said, political interest, again, just to encourage my nation, politics is everywhere. Politics is same everywhere, meaning that interest must align. I would think that the public sector could do better with having long-term vision. The one issue, I think I'm jumping the gun here a little, but the one issue I see the most is that we think in 4-year cycles, and we're going to need to think in longer cycles because infrastructure, like I said, is for the public good, and so usually it's very long-term. Let's talk about Third Mainland Bridge, my best friend.
Exactly.
My best friend, because why is there always a repair going on there?
Every year.
Some of it is maintenance that comes with the project itself, but some of it is like a complete overhaul. So you keep asking yourself, when you were selecting who to execute, what were your parameters? What did you say? Look, we mustn't have a pothole in a year. Was that actually stated in the document? Because at some point, we need to state things. So I would say that with public sector, they could do with a lot of long-term goals. Again, procurement will be another place where we have an issue.
Procurement.
So even though we do have a Bureau of Public Procurement, they have tried to digitize. We find that other countries are ahead of us in that regard. We are getting there, but they're ahead of us. So you talked about the ICRC, for example. They came in to solve a problem. They've been here since 2005. They've had a lot of changes, but they could do better. So I would just love to see parastatals being empowered to do what they want to do, and then actually do it. So you're a concession regulator. How are you regulating the concessions? I don't have to be educated to know that there are many projects that have failed and there were concessions. So it would be good to have clearer structures. With Nigerian laws, the challenge is always that there's so many areas that are not clear. So guidelines need to be. So the law also needs to be as fast as things are changing so that we don't have to take so much time to then go back to the Senate, House of Rep, the president to approve things. Let's just actually have laws that are more flexible. Someone was saying recently, look, most countries have 4-page laws. Everything else is a guideline. 4-page laws that any citizen can read, understand, and run with. We love, I think it might be like a Nigerian thing, we love bulk.
Exactly.
Lawyers also draft these things, and lawyers, we love words, we love to elaborate, we love to cover the ground. And so I would just say that with public sector, empowering an institution goes beyond just the law that establishes them, actually give them the power to, so that even though there's politics involved, meaning that politics must politic, this institution should be strong enough to still push forward with what it has. And also long-term thinking. And I'll just say more understandable and coincidence policies, I'd say.
Great. And I think one of the things you mentioned, which comes to bear, is when you have to seek consent from the State House of Assembly. Maybe you are doing like a major infrastructure in a state government, and you need consent from maybe even the Federal Executive Council. The Nigerian PPP laws related to the ICRC talks about final business case where the Federal Executive Council needs to sit, especially if the project is more than 20 billion. I felt that if you expose an infrastructure project to too many layers of, say, regulatory consents, you are exposing too much. You are putting yourself in a way whereby governance is going to be breached. Because those institutions, when they review your documentation, yes, they could say yes, they could say no. You may need to lobby, you may need to explain. But I know that the law finds out or even generally in terms of ESG and general governance, anti-corruption or anti-bribery issues, but and this is a different thing, where does lobbying, so when you use the word lobby to say, okay, go and follow up with that approval at Ministry of Ports, for example, MPA. They are approving your concession or something. Where is that middle ground? Whereby you are not overly influencing the public sector to do what you need to do, and you are also not corrupt by,
Okay.
giving some stipend.
So
Okay.
in Nigeria, we don't have lobbying laws. So
Are there lobbying laws generally?
To say in the US.
Oh, okay, the US, yes. Okay.
Lobbying is something that is allowed to go and, as a company, go to your state house or governor, whoever, to just say, look, we have this idea, we think it's great, we think you should buy into it.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
legalized to it's basically you selling an idea to the government.
That's good. Without any extra thing.
Yes. So you could argue in one way or the other, but I'm just saying that in the US, it's a thing that is recognized that private sector may need to work with the government, and there is
a lobbying framework.
It's allowed.
It's allowed, okay.
So in Nigeria, no, you cannot give. In fact, it is very strict. I know that for civil servants, they're not even supposed to take as little as 5,000. Yeah. You can't even give. There's some things you can feed them if they come to your office, but you can't give them things. It's really against that. However, I think that is good. What we can do more of, I'm going to draw example from Dangote. He's not perfect. Their structure isn't perfect, but they're really good. And the one thing I remember is when they were constructing the Apapa road, they used cement. And so his lobby, you can use the word lobby, his proposal to the government was, rather than pay you all these taxes, why don't we supply you cement?
Correct.
And so it did many things. Number one, we went from using asphalt or tar to using cement, which I hear is a lot better.
Correct, more stronger.
So in one fell swoop, he solved his problem, solved the government's problem, solved a national problem, which is we have roads that keep eroding. And now I found a solution. So there are ways to work with the government without influence. And so I wanted that someone that influenced. But however, now we have more roads with cement and it doesn't, I don't even think all the cement is from him.
Correct.
So that's one way to go about it, where you find a way to partner with the government to actually.
But that word partner is going to, that file will sit on the minister's secretary. He will move it to the PAMSEC before you get a meeting with the minister. So that's movement.
So that's a bureaucratic issue.
Exactly. Okay.
With bureaucracy, unfortunately, I don't think we can say here that can help you.
I get your point.
Bureaucracy is an issue in Nigeria.
Even in Africa, generally, really.
In Nigeria.
In Nigeria, okay.
I think that I worked across a few African countries, and Nigeria is, I would say Francophone countries may be competing with us.
Okay.
In terms of how paper they are, how this, you may never know the answer to when would this be ready. But in general, no, other African countries have resolved their bureaucratic issues, especially when it comes to corporate things that have to do with business, things that have to do with approvals. If they tell you it's in 7 days, in 7 days. If they have a crash, they will let you know.
Okay.
They are constantly updating. So bureaucracy is an issue we need to resolve. I know we're trying.
Yeah.
We need to do a lot better. So take CAC, for example. I'm a lawyer, so I could talk about CAC.
Okay.
Although this is like but the truth is, CAC used to be, you had to walk into CAC office to file and register a company. Mm-hmm. Then they moved online a little bit. And now they have AI doing the registration, where I can get a name. I used to be able to get a name approval in a week or two because I called somebody and said, I've put this name in, please. Yeah. Now AI is going to give you that approval on the spot. It will tell you this is not allowed, this is not allowed, this is not allowed. This one might go. And then once you submit it, it will give you a response on the same day.
Yeah.
That is taking out bureaucracy. That is ease of doing business. It was their goal. It was a goal they achieved. So I want to give credit where it's due. Correct. Meaning that there are organizations that have tried to implement this as government institutions, and they've done it. You know, we talked about procurement, for example. Procurement is now very digital. For most organizations, how you bid, how you tender, everything is digital. Upload everything on a portal, somebody's going to review it somewhere. Yeah. You know, and those things speed up things because, again, if there's not to say that you can't still influence the process there. I'm just trying to say that it's a more level playing field because at least I know that I will get a level of review and a level of consideration. Yeah. So we definitely have a lot to do with bureaucracy. I really don't know if we can actually solve that problem because I think some people also it might be a time thing. So with time, the new people that you bring into your system or the training you give them, then sort of rewires their brain from saying, oh, this memo. Because I'm doing a lot of land registration, so like COO.
Yeah, exactly. Which is very fundamental.
Can we talk about getting
wow.
that type of approval?
Yeah.
And it's on someone's table. They're not around. In fact, I was at a conference recently and a judge was saying, you want to do, let's say, appeals, for example. So the Court of Appeal would say they're very backlogged.
Correct.
10 years. And they're just saying, why can't one judge administratively in their office say this has no merit thrown out, this has a merit, go? But the issue is the law says for the court to be the court, there's a minimum number of judges that must sit. So now you've taken 7 or 5 judges, put them in a hole and say, if all of you don't listen to this paper that may be irrelevant, it cannot be done. So those are the things where sometimes the law is the issue with the bureaucracy. Sometimes it's just practice.
Correct.
And we've gotten a lot better. I really want to give credit there. So we just need to keep pushing harder to just say, this needs to go faster. Approval needs to go faster. The thing about giving gifts, again, you can't really, some things are in the system and they will take time. So I think it's known fact that most projects have someone's interest somewhere where if you don't cater to it, there's just nothing. And it's just implementing the law more. So we do have anti-bribery and corruption. Just implement it a little more.
Correct.
That's what I would say.
All right. Thank you for that. So we've talked about getting your projects signed up from a concession or whatever. We've talked about land acquisition for your project. And you've given very, very important insights into that. Now, the other part that comes into the project is procurement. And this is just private sector. Let's not even look at public sector. So you are a big Fortune 500, you want to do a rollout, you've set up a procurement committee, you have a board committee on procurement. What are the steps you think private sector infrastructure developers can take to ensure that their procurements can actually go in a very transparent way, and also ensuring they get best value for money, not overpaying and also not having what you call cost overrun?
You've said it.
Okay.
So accountability and transparency.
Transparency is key, yeah.
So you said that. With procurement, honestly, I keep giving caveats because some things are just, when they say this comes with the territory. With procurement, you can't solve everything. When I say that, I just mean some things you can't foresee. However, most companies actually do have this, to be fair to them. Submit to us the minimum. So are you a registered business? For most places, you have to be a registered business.
Correct.
For most places, you have to have like your tax clearance.
Correct.
You have to be registered with all the regulatory bodies. So maybe depending on what you're doing, do you have your NAFDAC? Depending on what you're doing, are you signed up with the Ports Authority? Did you get your clearance? Did you pay everything? Some of it is SON, so they'll say standards organization. So do you guys actually have an internal policy that works? So that's like the first thing, documentation being accurate. Because what sometimes happens is, I'm a new company, I have no experience, but you know me, so you're going to kind of slide me in. I believe in giving opportunities, so it's not always bad. It's just, even if you're going to do that, at least sort of show that someone there has really strong technical skills they are relying on. So I think the insistence on minimum standards, I always say this, every country has what we complain about, corruption. Yeah. Every country has it. Exactly. Let's be clear. The difference is what their minimum acceptable standard is.
Yeah.
So you cannot come and, because somebody in my organization has asked you for a kickback, you're inflating my cost, but you're still, because again, you live in Nigeria and you have heavy costs, let's be honest.
Correct, yeah.
So now you have your own cost inflated, you have the additional cost you want to pay inflated.
Exactly.
Now you're going to go import for me something that you know for a fact is not going to work. Recently, there was a video on social media about a house in Lekki crashing. And I just thought...
With substandard materials or something?
we don't know what the end is. So what the story online is, the engineer had come in. He saw that the building was tilting. This was at least 4 floors, if I remember,
Okay.
or 3 floors, if I'm not exaggerating.
Mhm.
But there was a lot of this had pillars, and then there was one end that was supposed to be suspended. So when you see the crash come from this side, and it just tilts. And I'm like, do you know how many people have to have failed at their job for that to happen?
And take a blind eye on.
So when we talk about procurement, we're talking about in that what kind of blocks were used? Were there metals that should have been put that were not put? Was there like a reinforcement they were supposed to reinforce that they had agreed on and said, this is what we're doing, and not done that? So with procurement, just have a minimum standard. Ensure, your procurement officer should be very stern. We can bend on A, B, C, D. We cannot bend on our minimum standard, which is if this should be from Bosch, or if this should be from who else does construction that I can think
Siemens
about?
Or GE.
Yeah. So if you have this, what you call them,
brands,
suppliers that you must use them. If you're going to go use someone else, give us feedback on why you're using them. Because again, not everybody uses ACs by Samsung.
Correct.
However, when they're switching to someone else, there's a cost-benefit analysis.
Correct.
We've reviewed this company. They're technically good, but because they're new, they're more affordable. So yes, you can save on cost, but don't save on cost at the expense of this not working. With infrastructure, think about it. We need this infrastructure to last for 200 years.
Correct.
But you're using materials that are not going to last 10 years because most things come with either how rating, to use it or a term of use.
Correct.
So for procurement, transparency meaning that documentation required should be gotten.
Okay.
Reporting must be strong. Reporting meaning that if we catch something, we have to report it, even if the preferred candidate predetermined will fall away.
Correct.
And I think for public sector, that will help them a lot. A
lot. And I think, those principles are even in the Bureau of Public Procurement. They have an act that is well detailed. I read it's very well put together. And if you follow those recommendations, you can't really go wrong in itself. Even there's an international competitive tender document by the World Bank that can always be used to tender for international procurements and things. So let's go into one other aspect of that governance comes in place is due diligence, right? So as a lender, right, I'm sure you probably must have advised some other organizations that are trying to seek a loan and things like that. A lender will definitely look for level of your board composition or your governance and things like that. But if you were to approach a lender for an infrastructure project and you want to be governance ready, what do you think a project promoter should have in mind?
Okay.
So 3 people, let me just put a scenario. 3 people, they have a project idea. They've not agreed shareholding yet, but people always say, let's do this project together. But who's going to be majority among the 3 of us? Nobody has already said anything. But how would you advise, or how would you recommend such people if they're going to raise financing down the line?
Okay. Again, if you're in any form of enterprise, always think about the long term.
Correct.
So long term means that right now we might be small, but in the future, when we're bigger, what would we have built on? Correct. If you keep building on winging it, on I was just feeling like, it was just my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah.
They said.
Yeah.
How are you going to convince a third party who doesn't know you or your record or your history? True. Because sometimes governance is about building reputation and history.
Yeah.
And goodwill is something that people put on their books as measurable.
Correct.
So just know that with governance, again, it might sound like we're just using this word all the time. Build the structures and the systems, be accountable, reporting. So the first thing I would say they should do is think about capacity.
Okay.
So think about what your capacity is now. and allocate accordingly. So identify your risk early, meaning that if we're building, no, if we're acquiring to build, first is what do we even have? Because
Ourselves.
a third party lender is gonna want collateral. Yes,
Correct,
usually
yeah.
usually the project is collateral,
Collateral.
but they also want other things.
Yeah, extra.
So either you've done it before, so you have a history to say, look, this is what we executed. It was a smaller scale, but this is the again. If you didn't document, they cannot help you.
That's true. That's
So
true.
how the money came in, how it was accounted for, the profits that were made.
Not that I transfer the money, but I don't have receipts. So maybe we want to pick up a flight. We want to do a road show. It's not like someone just booked everybody's flight. Have a proper invoice. Document how you spent the money, such that at least you can, show any third-party lender that okay, these are the expenses we've made so far.
It lets
And those things this thing you just mentioned now, it's as simple as it is. People don't think about it.
It's a game changer. That's the truth. And they will always ask you. So people always want all this allocations when CBN does it, when BOI does it, when Afrexim does it. But what's your track record?
Yeah.
And if you're starting at zero, because everybody starts somewhere,
yeah.
At least first identify your risk.
Mm-hmm.
Second, document and report. So be accountable to your own self.
Yeah.
This is how much we're registering the SPV.
Correct.
This is who has what share. You said how do they allocate shares? Usually based on what you bring.
Okay.
So I may not bring money, but I bring people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people are the strongest. So either I'm bringing like the off-taker or I'm bringing the financier or I just have connections that help us get regulator approvals quicker.
Correct, yeah.
So those are things you can trade and say, this is my portion.
Yeah.
Also allocate risk in a way. Also allocate those shares based on risk, meaning that if I'm carrying the heaviest risk, usually it should show.
Yeah.
It should show. Again, reporting. A lot of people fail in their reporting because they're trying to hide things.
Yeah.
Your staff is hiding things from you. You're hiding things from
exactly.
Have a board composition. Most companies don't do this, especially in the private sector.
Yeah.
We're all winging. It's like you said, my daddy, my mommy, my brother, which is okay, by the way. However, within that structure, bring in just one third party, or within that structure, allocate to everybody their roles.
Yeah. Just to jump in on that regulatory thing. So a while back, I wanted to bring in a director to an organization I was forming, but there tends to be also this anti-filtering or filtering. Like, I don't know what you are doing. I don't want CBN. Are you borrowing money? You know those days when we had AMCON. We still have AMCON anyway. So, they just come and pick you up, plus the MD of the company and all the directors who didn't even know so much about how the loan was mismanaged, right? So now when you invite somebody to your board, there's always a bit of hesitance like that.
As it should, by the way.
It should, actually.
I always tell people who are new board appointees, don't take every board position. Not every board position is like a tap on your shoulder that you're doing well.
Correct.
Some of them want to put you in trouble. Because what the law says is that the company and its officers are going to be held accountable. We don't, look, if you like, don't pay your tax, eh?
Wow.
The company will be held. They'll come and hold all of you that are the board of directors and say, so that's what the law says. Your board, your company and the officers. Officers are directors. The directors of a company are its officers. Sometimes the company secretary is also an officer considered, depending. So you have to be careful. So it's good that people are careful.
Careful, yeah.
The other thing is, of course, you can wiggle out of it. So wiggle out of it meaning, as a director also, if you've asked the right questions, if you have said no, which is why we do minutes of the meeting.
Yeah.
To have documentation to say, they brought this up, I said no.
No.
To show an email trail to say, as you can see, I was deliberately taken out, so I can't be held accountable for this particular one because clearly. So even if you take those roles, just be more detailed. So don't wing it and say, I'm on this board, I'm quiet. No, ask questions.
Yeah.
They're taking a loan. Tell them, please let me know you're taking a loan.
Yeah.
Usually loans require board approval.
Definitely.
So if they don't get a board approval in the way, meaning that if they just get two people to sign it, those are things you can question. So I was going to, like I said, constitute your board. And for people who are going to be on boards, be very careful. Be very careful before someone tarnishes your clean name.
That's true.
Because that's a thing, you know. I would also say that something else that we can do for infrastructure projects is really, really think about I know I'm saying this a lot, but long term. So long term just means even though we're making profit and we want to make the highest profit, maybe we should make less profit so that in the long term, this thing still exists and makes us more money, because you
That's
always
true.
make more money long term anyway.
That's true.
What I find is also that most people take it with developers as the best people I can use. Developers want their money in and out, as opposed to building housing where they understand that this should be like a 20-25 year plan. No, they want it on the day they're selling it to you.
That's true.
You know, and sometimes understandably, the challenge is the ripple effect. What's the ripple effect? We now have a real estate bubble where there's so much, it's so high, who can even afford housing? As opposed to somebody thinking, you know what, everybody is in this high end. What about the low end? Can I just build, make my margins back? Yeah, very little, but it's still that I didn't make a loss. I made money. It's just not, I'm going to fly to Dubai now and be chief.
I understand.
But you can run your business and run that project again.
Correct.
I would say that's something to think about.
All right. So we're coming to the end of this podcast.
Okay.
So just one last question, right? And this you can talk about it from both public sector and private sector.
Okay.
So what one governance change, if enacted today, will have the greatest impact on infrastructure delivery in the next 5 years?
Okay.
So one from
public and one from private.
From a private, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go a bit of a tangent before I come to the answer.
Okay.
So I'm going to first say, with infrastructure governance, we need, I think I'm answering the question already, we need enforcement that is strong.
Okay.
So when I say enforcement, look, I know Nigerians don't believe this, but we have very strong policies.
Yep.
Again, some of them are really muddled and thick, but we do have strong policies.
Mm-hmm.
We do have capacity. I think sometimes we forget that Nigerians are actually really good, because one way or the other, it seems like things don't work. But the truth is, for the things that work, it tells you that actually there's capacity for this thing. It just, in this case, wasn't thought as a priority. Enforcement, what do I mean? Let's take MM2. MM2, when it was done, it was PPP.
Yep.
They had issues.
Yes, a lot of issues.
The ICRC just recently resolved that administratively.
Okay.
But how long did it take them to do that? Something, again, the same way we have election petitions, maximum timeline at 6 months.
6 months.
The reason we come to arbitration and we have administrative processes is for short. You cannot tell me that in 5 years I'll get resolution. No, enforcement needs to be within 6 months to a year. Yeah. We're talking about money. We're talking about capital. That's something that I think would be great. The other example I'll give that I really like is the National Theatre. Mm-hmm. I visited it recently, so I'm smiling a little bit because I was super impressed.
Wow.
I know we know that also PPP.
Yes.
So this is CBN, Bankers Committee, federal government, Lagos did a little bit. And they did a fantastic job, in my opinion, in my personal opinion. Mm-hmm. What do we see there? Number one, the federal government, what did they take? They didn't take all the risk, but it's still owned by the government.
Yep.
Lagos State had to come in because, again, you're in their states.
Yes.
But what did the bankers do? This is a 1 billion naira project. And what we see is, I think because of the caliber of people it's the finance sector.
Yeah.
You can tell that, number one, it was done in good timing. It was well done. If you've been there, you know that this wasn't a play renovation. It was work well done. And I'm using them as an example because of how we then continue. Because it's not just about, PPPs are not just so that we can look at something and just say, oh my God, we have new transformers. Who cares? What is the service delivery? I feel like we always do PPPs without thinking, oh, we're trying to service the public.
Exactly.
I always say that BRTs are like the best things, but they should be going forward. I mean, that we should be seeing more buses because it's making money and people are using it more. But we're seeing less buses. But people like it. So with the National Stadium, National Theatre, please, they did a fantastic. I think that we should look at PPPs that have worked and try and replicate them.
Yep.
So right now, you'll see there's also publicity to come and use it. So it's not like the government just put its money, because it's government, we don't care. No. there's an SPV that manages it, and they run it the way you will run an actual event center. So they publicize, they try to go to organizations, come and use them. Maintenance is what I would like to see, but from what I observed, they have a lot of staff who are very like on the nose. They follow their rules and the protocols. The security was so good, so I could tell that there's intentionality here for something that is government owned and public-private. So let's do more of that.
Correct.
For the private sector, one reform we can have with infrastructure, let's encourage ourselves.
But the code of public governance, I don't think it's a conditions precedent, right, in infrastructure lending. Maybe they might want to add it. That is being a member or having some level of clearance with it. But it's for PLC companies anyway.
For reporting purposes, what I mean.
Yes, okay.
Public companies have to report on the fact that they followed it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the truth is, the idea of infrastructure governance already carries some of those principles in. So it doesn't have like the actual rules and that says, have a board, have a committee, but those principles are transferred into it, meaning that we want to see a mechanism in place. We want to see, how did you select the project, like you said earlier?
Exactly.
What considerations were there?
Exactly.
How did you implement? How did you manage it? And how are your stakeholders? So I think something that infrastructure projects don't really do so well is with the stakeholders. It's almost like you don't care about your stakeholders, and they should be a key part. To bring up stakeholders, there was a case that is in the news recently, I think this weekend or something, or last week. SERAP is like an NGO, that look into things.
Yeah, I heard about them.
And they are suing NNPC for the budget they gave for branding. And just saying, look, again, kudos to the procurement, what do we call them? The procurement agency. Because they're online and it's a little more transparent. That's Bureau of Public Enterprises. Yes, please. And they're a lot more transparent. People can then...
Bureau of Public Procurement.
Yes.
PPP. Not BPE. Okay.
Yeah, Nigerian Bureau.
Yeah.
So the fact that things are now transparent and online, people could follow and say, this is how much was allocated, which is the only reason they can bring that suit.
That's
to say,
true.
Actually, there's something here. So I'm saying that to say, in our processes, we may not need the code of corporate governance. Okay. I don't think we need, which is what I tried to say at the beginning, smaller laws, guidelines maybe, just do one page, things people can understand quickly, which is why I'm trying to use like examples to help us sort of bring it home. What we need is people who actually are committed to the outcomes. So we can have because again, we didn't always have freedom of information. So how did we get here? Freedom of information passed. People could ask. So we have platforms like budgets. We have so many of them, Sears. They will tell you this happened, that people, you want to drag your government, but at least they gave you the ability to drag them.
Exactly.
Because that's so important.
Exactly.
So with governance, I would say with infrastructure governance, it's applying those into infrastructure. It's not really lifting. Sometimes you don't need some of the things that are there, but everybody needs transparency.
Definitely.
Transparency, we just mean if something was done, if there's an issue, say it quickly. Number 2, accountability. Be accountable to the board for the SPV or for the bureau that you're under. Be accountable to them and report accurately, because again, some of the challenges we have is people just be writing things they feel like, as opposed to this is what is on ground. And lastly, what I was going to say before I diverted a little to the case was that we've talked about transparency, accountability, responsibility. Maybe this falls under responsibility. Yeah. You don't have to make all the money now.
That's true. Try and build the foundation.
We really, really, I brought up the National Theatre and I followed that story a little because do you know what it is to be a Nigerian who has seen a monument and it's still there and you can go into it and be excited to see it look so good? We need more of that.
That's true.
So I would say my encouragement to everyone who's watching, if you're on a board somewhere, if you're a decision maker, if you're new, if you're old, just apply the principles. Yes, everybody wants to hide their mistakes. It's sort of human. But the reason we say report it is because it helps improve the decision-making process. It helps catch things before they actually collapse. Because it's not possible that a building that collapses started with the collapse. So there was already, cracks that people kept patching and patching and patching and patching. And let's also just on a person, let's culturalize it. So the thing in corporate governance you hear about is when we talk about don't let it not be a checkbox, we always say it should be a culture thing. A culture thing means in our company, we always disclose. In our company, we put our stakeholders first. So we don't play with shareholder money. We invest it properly. We're accountable for it. If our customers are also there, customers are stakeholders, we're accountable to them in the products and the quality we give them. These little principles help you. The one thing I would really love to see in Nigeria, I don't see it enough, customer service.
That's true.
Look, in a hospital, the person who's sick that comes in is your customer. So it's very sad that I will enter a public hospital and you will just tell me I don't have a bed sheet just because I'm in a public hospital. I'm human.
Exactly.
I'm human. Right. And this is supposed to be paid for by taxpayer money.
That's true.
So service your customer. If you're at the airport, this is personal, but give me screens that I can see the flights that are going in and out.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I'm at the ports, give me records, don't hold my goods for no reason. Give me service like you actually care about the end user.
Yeah.
Who's the public.
Correct. Thank you so much, Ibuku. It's really been a wonderful discussion with you. And this comes to the end of the program, Making Infrastructure Happen. I'm glad you have learned a lot about governance and infrastructure. You've also learned about all what we discussed relating to private sector and public sector, transparency being a core pillar. Until the next episode, I would like to say thank you. Please follow our various YouTube, Spotify, and Apple podcasts to listen more, and hope to see you again. Thank you very much. Thank you.